The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
You're listening to
Wrestling to the Max.
Alert, clear all channels.
This is an exclusive.
How you like that? Wrestling to the Max. Smackdown. Review.
Hello and welcome to the WWE Smackdown live review on I just screwed up this intro. Just like I screwed up the intro at the beginning because I played the wrong thing and then had to stop and play the right thing. But yes, you are listening to the Wrestling Max podcast and we are reviewing Smackdown live here for May 23rd, 2017. And with me here is Mr. Paul Leazar, of course.
Heyo.
And I am your host, returning for, I think, I've missed for like the last 2 weeks or something. So, here we go. Of course, this is the post-Backlash episode of SmackDown, so lots of fallout from stuff here. And, namely, the crowning of it. Well, I mean, he's already been crowned, but the celebration for the Maharaja, Jinder Mahal. This wasn't overly long. From what I saw of some, natives on Twitter, they said that they were done right. That this celebration was, at least, they didn't do anything that wasn't something you'd see in something like this. I mean, Mahal didn't say anything I thought that we haven't heard him say before.
Mm-hmm.
But, at least you didn't have Randy Orton do the cliche come in and ruin it thing. And you did hear it was some slight from the people in Toledo, but you got some Maharaja chants and a few other things for him there, but nothing really like negative either. It was weird. I don't know if you take that as success or not, that he's not really getting he didn't get like the heavy boos he's gotten before. It was just kind of, I guess, there.
It's almost like begrudging acceptance. Like, well, he's the champion, and this is happening in front of our eyes, and maybe they just still couldn't believe it yet, is all. I think the most important thing from this is that they let him go out there and try to let him stand on his own as an act and see what kind of response he got. And it wasn't really anything big, one way or the other, but I think he held up well. Like you said, his promo wasn't anything special and nothing we hadn't heard before, but like the whole presentation and everything, he certainly feels like a star. And that might be the most important thing to come out of this, other than the fact that there was nobody coming in to attack him, there was nobody coming out to make a challenge, there was none of that. It was just Jinder getting a chance to go out there and see if he can carry it, and I think he did all right. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a star, too. He looks good in the suit. He has his buddies there with him, and, and the Singh brothers. And, I should preface that they had already said that Randy Orton is going to get his rematch at Money in the Bank. So that was set. So there really wasn't a need to have Randy Orton come out here either. He already knew he was getting his title shot, just rest and whatever. It wasn't this knockout segment, but I think that right now he looks like a star, and looking at him from doing he also did a only India version of a promo backstage, and he looked really happy to be, carrying the flag for his country, I guess, and all that stuff. So, I mean, yes, he's also Canadian. We should note that as well. But I mean, I think that look, he gets a lot. This is going to happen, right? You have so many people that are going to be against this. People that are going to obviously just love having fun with it. Twitter is just full of people that love having fun with the fact that Jinder won, and they changed all their Twitter handles to something with Jinder Mania or whatever. It's almost like a parody of itself, really, at this point. But a lot of discussion today in our group about just not being happy about him being picked. And yes, Vince has this bad idea sometimes of, okay, we need to do something with some country or some region. Who do we have that represents that? Let's just use him.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, let's be honest. He needed to do that right now. He can't go find the next Indian star and take 2 years to do this. He feels like he's got to do it right now, and he used the guy he had, and, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like I've said many times, and like I think many of us have said, like, Jinder is not awful by any stretch of the imagination. He's just not great. And when you're on a brand with so many great stars, and suddenly you get thrusted into the limelight, I mean, some of that's going to stick out a little bit, like his promo here. But I just, like, he has the look. I think he has the ability to be a decent champion. They just got to commit, and so far, first stop into his championship run, they look like they're committing to what they've done so far, which is great. So hopefully they can knock this out of the ballpark and have themselves somebody else to play with over on SmackDown that'll be worth something going forward.
Certainly, and speaking of, we were talking about Money in the Bank already. To start the show off, they basically set up the Money in the Bank ladder match right off the bat. No frills about this either. That AJ Styles, Baron Corbin, Dolph Ziggler, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, and Shinsuke Nakamura are in the Money in the Bank ladder match. Grown. But Owens apparently wasn't going to be in it at first, but he sort of protested. And then the guys kind of come out to, discuss things. Shane McMahon makes a Baron Corbin and Sami Zayn rematch. And then we get, with the other four, you get Kevin Owens and Ziggler against AJ and Shinsuke for the Ultimate Dream Team tag match with those guys. I guess not a whole lot there with how they announced this, but they picked the major players. I guess you can't really complain about that.
They have the added benefit of all these guys really feel like they belong because they've been central to the story of SmackDown since the Superstar shakeup, and further back for some of them. And, all these guys feel like they matter. All of them feel like they could win, except for maybe Dolph, But with the way they sort of pulled the trigger on Dolph at the very beginning of the brand split, like, it could happen again. I mean, Jinder just won the belt. Why can't Dolph win the briefcase? So, I'm fine with this lineup. Like I said, it feels big. It feels like all these guys matter, and you have stories with all of them. And that little brief face-off with AJ and Shinsuke while AJ was doing his promo, I was really expecting a bigger pop than what they got, and said it was just sort of people hanging on AJ's every word, which I guess is equally a good thing. I was hoping there were a lot more New Japan fans in the house.
It was Toledo, Ohio.
It was Toledo, Ohio.
But hey, I think we should give them credit because they were active for most of the night. I mean, they were into a lot of things, so there is that. And I mean, Corbin and Zayn have had this thing's kind of not been going on very long, but it's a feud, and Kevin Owens and AJ have had their thing. and Shinsuke and Dolph have had theirs. I mean, I know we made the statement about I don't think we really wanted Shinsuke to be in a ladder match, but now that he is, you feel any way about it? I just worry about him. This is not an environment he's been in before, and worry about him hurting himself or anything like that.
I mean, him taking an injury here would really suck, but there's an interest here for me just to see exactly what he does. Like, I mean, hopefully he's not so silly as to just go in there and throw knees at ladders for the whole 20 minutes they're going to be out there, but, I mean, he could. But, I mean, I am interested in just watching him interact with all these guys. It's a foreign environment for him. And, I mean, they're teasing a whole bunch of different stuff with all these guys with Shinsuke, and just sort of, I guess, seeing where the wind takes him with him right now, because, I mean, he feels like a big star for somebody who's only been here for a month already, and that's exactly what he deserves and what you need on SmackDown right now.
Yeah, the crowd responds to him like a big star, and it's almost sort of like a rite of passage, right, to have a ladder match. When you're starting, like all these other, all the other guys have some kind of experience in that, and then it's like, okay, Shinsuke, here's your time. If you can do this and fit in, you have, like, checked off something. Just to say you've done it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not getting a gimmick match pretty quickly into your WWE career as sort of like the icebreaker, then maybe they don't have a lot of high hopes for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's good for him, too, and I like the fact that they're not shying away from him talking either. They constantly, in a way, he has that fun backstage segment with AJ later, where AJ brings up the past, and then he sort of asserts that, hey, look, I've been the one that, this is the place that AJ built, and then of course Nakamura always has to have his own fun thing and says, look, I'm going to turn your house into a playground when we fight each other at Money in the Bank. It was short and sweet, but I just like the fact that we're not scared to have him talk. We all know that he's not going to sound pitch perfect or whatever, but you're letting him go out there and get the practice and get more emotion from him out of the... It's a way to... I see it as, I guess, it's another way to kind of make him endearing to the fans. It's not just this larger-than-life guy. It's, he also can talk, and you get to know him a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I think him and AJ sort of being paired up on this episode in this sort of first forum on live television, he certainly felt more comfortable with AJ out there. And he felt more at ease and easier to connect to. And I think that's what I really appreciate. Just somebody that probably pretty well on a personal level, and somebody who you can easily relate to because he's been where you've been. And you can't say that for a ton of the other guys on the WWE roster.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, they have history in New Japan, and now they can be on the same brand on SmackDown, and like you said, you just have the camaraderie there to know that, I guess, he's got your back in multiple ways.
Right.
And you get this Dream Team matchup here. It goes almost like 30 minutes. This is a long tag match. I mean, I guess if you take out the commercials, a little bit less. But, man, there was a lot going on here. And... I don't know that it was like this. It wasn't the spectacular main event or whatever that you think it should be, but Nakamura gets the Kinshasa and wins. And there's fun stuff in here. Just, I don't know. I felt like I got hyped more, and the hype didn't get fulfilled, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. I mean, with these four guys in a ring together, you're expecting a lot, and what you get here is something fun. And it's 25 minutes, which is incredible. And even though this match feels every second of those 25 minutes, I think there's a lot here to spin off of. Well, one, the match is fun. I think Kevin Owens and Dolph Ziggler had a nice heel shtick going where they really felt like they were just trying to rub it in Nakamura's face the entire time he was in there. before he finally tags out to AJ and then gets the big run at the end whenever he gets tagged back in. So I thought that was good. Shinsuke getting a pin on Kevin Owens could mean something. It usually does. Whether he's going to get a U.S. title match down the road or not would be super interesting, just because, one, Kevin Owens has experience working New Japan guys from Ring of Honor, and I think him and Shinsuke could have a dynamite feud, and that's somebody who you could put in the ring with him, and another guy he can feel comfortable with, not only in the ring but on the microphone and in these backstage segments and all this other stuff. So I think this is sort of a primer for what to expect going forward, more than something to be super excited about right now.
Yeah, and I think they also didn't want to just let everything go crazy in this match, and kind of they want to get your appetite wet for Money in the Bank, and I feel like this did that in a way. Kevin Owens also has the match with Shinsuke from ROH, so they've worked each other, and I'm sure if they did have the U.S. title match, it's going to be awesome. But it's that like regular, just a typical tag match main event that you see on SmackDown quite a bit, and still, you're pushing the Money in the Bank thing forward, and that's all you need to do right now, because the focus is sort of on the Raw brand with their pay-per-view coming up a little bit sooner. And then you also get Baron Corbin and Sami Zayn getting their match on, and Sami Zayn rolls him up really fast in 15 seconds of the roll-up.
Yeah, and then Baron Corbin just completely makes him pay for it by murdering him afterwards. And, this is what Sami excels at, right? Is not only getting surprise wins and sort of somehow manage to come out on top, but just getting all the sympathy afterwards. Like, the people in the audience reacted perfectly to Baron Corbin's attempted murder on Sami Zayn here, and all credit to Sami Zayn here, but Baron's kind of coming along at a pace that's kind of hard not to sort of take a shine to the guy now.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I've been more of a Corbin guy earlier than you have, but there's no doubt that this is a guy WWE likes. He has a certain aura about him, and he has that I don't give a crap attitude, and he continues to get to show that. He did it here against Sami Zayn. Don't know if this means Zayn's going to wind up being out of the match or not. He's got 3 weeks to heal, which that's usually a lot faster than most people. AJ wouldn't even show signs of the leg injury from, Backlash. So
right,
that's it. Just depends on what they want to do with this story, I guess. But it adds more fuel to that fire for there to be bigger things in the lead up and how they're going to do with this. But looking at it right now, I still feel like this is kind of set up for Corbin to win that Money in the Bank, but we'll see. I guess.
They do have time. I think a lot of this sort of depends on what they want to do here and how quickly they, switch the championship from Jinder, because I did not think he would be walking around with the championship right now. So doing that changes things up huge, I think, for the title picture. And secondly, I guess it also depends on what they want to do for SummerSlam, because they have to keep that in mind. And I still think AJ and Randy Orton is something they want to do. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they either do a quick title switch or AJ ends up winning and cashing in at some point down the line, just because, AJ with the championship on SmackDown just feels right now, like sort of like Cena at times.
Oh, yeah, totally right. It's just this, like, when he's got the title, you feel like, all right, this is the guy that's been carrying the show. He deserves it. I wouldn't be surprised totally if you keep the title on Jinder and have Baron. If you're going to have Baron win, I feel like Baron's the type of guy that he might that same night go and cash in or something like that. And that's how you can sort of get around you don't have to change the title. You can just have Baron beat him. And I don't know that having the rematch later is going to be good, but that's what SmackDown's for. You can have something like that on a SmackDown, and it's not going to hurt you too much. I don't know that you'd do it at the next pay-per-view, but look, there's so many. You can make a case for each one of those guys, and I think that's what's cool about that ladder match is. As much as I would have loved to have seen Ty Dillinger in there, who wasn't on the show, it's hard to make a case that he was going to be a Money in the Bank winner.
Yeah, and I mean, with it being SmackDown though, and especially after Backlash and everything else they've done, like why not Ty? I mean that's one of the really cool things I think about SmackDown now. Is just it really does feel like anything could happen since the get-go, and that's something I really appreciate. But yeah, I mean, I think Ty, they're more content to let him do a slow build, maybe up to the U.S. title, than rather stick him into the Money in the Bank match right off the bat. Yeah,
their slogan certainly rings true all the time. Land of the opportunity. That's all this is the land of opportunity. That's what they do on this show. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you just don't go out and yell out this slogan and then it's just a slogan that you say. They actually live up to that. So that's what I always appreciate about SmackDown. And they try to do this in a very, I guess there's no other way, a quick manner with the tag team titles. With Tyler Breeze taking on Jey Uso, and he beats him in like 25 seconds. Because Fandango squirts him with water, and they have these little toy guns, and he's shooting them with water, and it's great. And then Jimmy shows up, and they're gonna have another, Fandango and Jimmy Uso are gonna have a match, and so Jimmy gets involved really fast, and Fandango just rolls up Jimmy in there, because Jay, I guess, is distracting Jimmy by chasing Tyler Breeze around, and the first thing I thought of was, well, you already did this with Sami Zayn, so the luster's a little bit off here on those. But I like it just because it kind of fits their gimmick, I guess.
The Fashion File segment they did early in their night too with Shane was absolutely hilarious. Where they, they're saying they failed at Backlash, so they're trying to turn in their badges, and they turn in the toy guns, and they almost take off all their clothes too because they're still dressed like cops, and it's really funny. And I just like this. This is what Febreze is, right? Or Breezango, or whatever you want to call them. They're fun guys. And they just happen to be able to work. And I think the tag title match, they show you that in sort of these little quick sprints like this, they're really fun. And they can work, and they can almost win the belts because they get a couple near falls before the Usos finally put them away. And, I mean, I wouldn't say this has done wonders for them, but they do feel like they kind of matter. And maybe with the New Day coming back in, there's fun to be had there. The Usos obviously still riding high. You get American Alpha back in this picture, you might have some tag teams to work with going forward.
I just feel bad for Breezango because I think the minute New Day come back, that nobody's going to really care about them too much. Just because of how huge, New Day is. But I like if you didn't like these roll-up things, you can't say it didn't work because the crowd was really into the tag team title match that happened right after.
Yeah.
And I think that tells you that, what they were trying to do worked. Because, hey, you had these small little matches, and then, hey, why not? This is SmackDown. Anything can happen. Well, we're going to have this tag title match right now. And sadly, I immediately, as soon as they were having the tag match, was like, well, there's no way they're going to let the Usos get pinned 3 times. So this is just all to reel the people in and then smack them right in the face when the Usos win again. And exactly what happened, but hey, you still get to have fun with these guys, and I think that's what it's all about in the end. So for me, story well told.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I mean, it may not have made the tag titles feel super important, but it has been fun. It has been enjoyable to watch on SmackDown every week, and that's certainly something to be said in favor of both teams.
Yeah, and I mean, credit to them for going with one of the lesser teams, and saying, okay, well, let's just do something with them. Why not? And credit to Fandango and Breeze for coming up with the Fast and Files thing, and it's really funny, and that better not be the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Damn you, Shane. But I mean, they need to be doing it. Like, God, they need to have like guests in there. They need to have just random superstar number one or whatever in those, making like cameo appearances and stuff. Just go all out with those. That'd be so great. So I mean, I'd love for them to have like their own thing on the network or something, but it probably won't happen. But still, credit to them for that. And who knows? Maybe the Ascension will get a run at some point. Mm-hmm. Maybe. But,
I mean, going by what we've seen so far, they kind of are the only ones left out in the wind right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're the only ones that really haven't ever gotten to do anything. So I don't know. Like, they're pretty much your. I guess the Authors of Pain have kind of taken it with, but you have something there with just guys being bruisers or whatever. If they could ever get them back to what made them great in NXT, it's there's always that possibility, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna take a lot, I think, though, just because they've been a joke really since they came up to the main roster because they dropped the ball with them so hard. And
as soon as they made them cut those promos,
yeah,
it was
dead. Over. Yeah, it was over.
It's like, don't have them try to copy a legendary tag team when they are nothing like that tag team. Just, like, Authors of Pain, I think, look better in that role than the Ascension do.
Yeah,
and it's just makes you sad for those guys. Really, they were so hot in NXT, but I also they let them be really, really dominant, so that also helps.
Very true. I mean, in NXT, they had this aura about them. They had the crowd behind them with what started out as, I think, some good ribbing that turned into something that just sort of stuck with them. And none of that transferred over at all whenever they decided to change up the gimmick. So just a little bit of rehab and a little bit of maintenance for the gimmick, and maybe you can get them back on the right track to being something more.
Perhaps it will be a challenge, certainly, for the SmackDown team to figure that out. So I think the only thing we haven't talked about here is the women, and they had a Charlotte and Becky Lynch against Carmella and Natalya match. You had Charlotte and Becky beating Carmella and Natalya here because they have to, I guess, get the 50-50 in here. And it sort of works for what you're going to do later as Becky makes Carmella tap out. I thought this was a good, a decent match. It wasn't anything, write home about or anything.
Yeah, nothing to write home about. Pretty much frames that one pretty nicely. It's more rehab, I think, for the faces here. They get a good strong win. For them, at least going forward, but the match just kind of is bleh. But it does lead to some fun booking later on because we're going to have a Fatal 5-Way next week, Sean, for a number one contendership to the Women's Championship.
Which makes you think that the rumor that came out, I think either today or yesterday, of the Women's Money in the Bank again, which I feel like this was happening last year too, and it didn't happen then.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you do the typical, oh man, we just had a 5-way, but we still can't crown a number one contender. Well, how about we do a Money in the Bank? It looks like they are probably going to crown a contender here. It's an elimination match too, so it'd be really hard to say that we need to have another stipulation match after this. For me though, like I feel like in that whole Best of 7, even though Tamina hasn't really done anything, she is right about all these others have come in there and they lost. So why not her? Family war going on. Let's just do it.
Yeah, I really don't know. It seems like they want to do something with Carmella going forward. And admittedly, she might need this the most out of everybody just to sort of seem relevant still. But
that's another big rumor that she's going to get a big push.
Mm-hmm. And she could certainly use it. She is by far the least over of all these girls. But maybe outside Tamina. But I don't have a horse in the race outside of Becky. Just because I'm always a big fan of hers. So whatever they decide to do, and if they do decide to go with a women's Money in the Bank, or even just a women's ladder match with all 6 of them, and hang the women's title above them, I think that'd be fine too.
Yeah, that's very possible as well. They could just decide to have a women's ladder match. But I feel like at that pay-per-view, you almost kind of have to do it. And, like, there's nothing that says they have to do it every year if they do it this year either. They can just decide to have a one-off.
Mm-hmm.
And because, the stipulation dictates it or whatever. It's the same thing with the, people want the women's Royal Rumble. And, if you can come up with a storyline reason for it, I don't see why not. But that whole idea of, okay, well, once we do it one time, we have to do it every other time, that's not necessarily true. You just have to condition the audience to understand that, well, we're not doing it this year or whatever. Have something else going on at that time so that people don't question why you're not doing it Money in the Bank.
I would be okay with that. If you do something like that with the Royal Rumble, I think people are going to expect that every year. You could probably get away with Money in the Bank being every so often or are not expected yearly, and they just happen to have a story that would fit at this time around or something like that. Just because it's so much younger and Royal Rumble has so much tradition to it to where you would expect it every year because we've come to expect it every year no matter what.
Right, exactly. That does have that cachet to it that once you call this a Royal Rumble, there's
Mm-hmm.
gotta be stakes to it. And those stakes are usually a WrestleMania spot. Do you feel like maybe they don't do these things because you'll also get the bad rap from a lot of people, especially, the feminist crowd that will say, well, you're just having them do what the men do already. You're basically just copying what the men, like, could you imagine if you do have a Money in the Bank and you also have a Royal Rumble every year and you go, oh, well, okay, well, now every time the woman is crowned by the woman number one contender, it's always whoever wins that women's Rumble. Do you think that kind of plays into it a little bit of just let's have our own way of deciding contenders and champions?
Maybe. I don't think WWE thinks like that. I think this is more of looking at it from extreme violence against women is perceived in our society. And they go out there and they have these matches, and sometimes they have these gimmick matches, but they very rarely do those where they have hardcore rules like that. And when you throw them in a ladder match or something like that, I know it's different nowadays, especially in wrestling, where this is sort of becoming expected that women can do just as much as the men. They just don't interact as far as wrestling goes, unless you're in the indies. That in the WWE, you don't really get the opportunity to do the big gimmick matches. And that's something that they're either shying away from because of that perspective on violence, or they're either shying away from because maybe they don't trust. I don't have a great logical reason behind this other than they just don't want to do it. So, it could be feminism, it could be violence, it could be a whole host of other reasons that we can't even think of right now, but there's some stigma to this that they don't want to touch, and maybe that's part of the women's revolution is just going to have to be trying to overcome that stigma in the WWE and getting those opportunities when you can.
Yeah, very true. It's one of those things that eventually, if we see it, great. If not, we got to just keep going with this. Just hopefully at some point, WrestleMania, they do get to have a singles women's match. And it doesn't always have to be a multi-person thing, but I guess we should be happy with the fact that they've come really far right now. And, I mean, they did make a big deal about the Mae Young's women's tournament announced today. So, I know apparently Mae Young has this, like, not the greatest rap on her or something. But from WWE history, you're looking at, you want to talk about a woman that's, she's been around for a long time. I don't think you want to call it the Trish Stratus, women's tournament or whatever. Like, the Mae Young women's tournament has this kind of a good ring to it, and just when I think of that Attitude Era time, not only do I think of Trish and Lita, I think of all the crazy crap that Mae did. And she really did a lot for being an older lady and being a woman,
I'm really surprised they didn't call it the Fabulous Moolah Women's Tournament or something like that, or use Moolah's real name, just because not only was she in that same line as Mae Young of being around in that time frame, but an exceedingly skilled wrestler, both in the WWE and in actual amateur wrestling. And she was legitimately the world champion for almost 20 years. So, I mean, there's just, you can't really touch somebody with that level of skill. And I'm just surprised they didn't use her instead of Mae, just because Mae didn't have the wrestling background, and that's sort of what they're after. But either way, I'm fine with it. It's a way to honor not only Mae Young, but I think women from that era as well, who sort of paved the way. So. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet, I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and maybe that's when we'll get these bigger stipulation matches, when you have a lot more women that you're having to deal with on these brands. So, I mean, you got to think about it. You only got the 6, and whenever Nikki comes back, 7 women, if she does it all. And, you usually need more than that to be able to fill not only the championship spot, but able to do a Rumble or a ladder match, or a Money in the Bank, and have other things going on. But that's kind of covers everything from SmackDown. I felt like it was a really quick show, except, the main event it did feel long at certain parts, but not a whole lot great, you set up the next pay-per-view. Awesome. But that's kind of how I felt. Like, okay, you set the next pay-per-view, and yeah.
I mean, there's still stuff happening over here, right? Like, you have the tag team situation getting some more love. Even though it's real quick and mostly comedic, it's still something. I think the Jinder segment went off pretty well. Sammy and Baron got a lot in during this, and like you said, they set up everything going forward for the Money in the Bank match. I still enjoyed myself, even though the main event was super long and felt every inch of it, but 6.5, about where I'm at. I think this above average for sure, and there's some fun wrestling on here to boot.
Yeah, I'll go with a 6. I think it was just, you've got the main event that's worth at least checking out from that perspective of seeing the AJ and Shinsuke together. Nothing really overstays its welcome, and you get some good stuff going on with the tag titles. I really enjoyed that, and so, and it was an event to be on Twitter while the Jinder thing was going on, because it was madness with the people just going way overboard with him, like how great all this was and everything. It's just, it's so funny. But yeah, so that's your SmackDown Live review for this week, guys. So, make sure you check out the rest of our great content from this podcast. You can check out Gary and Paul reviewing Raw. We're about to review 205 Live in a little bit, so you can check that out. And of course, the regular W2M Part 1 episode, we talk about the YouTube crisis with indie wrestling, the nights 3 through 5 of Best of Super Juniors, so we're sort of caught up on that. I know night 6 just happened yesterday, and then they take a break today. And yeah, well, there's the UK special review too, which you want to check out because there's 2 great matches that you're going to want to go watch if you haven't watched that yet. So yeah, lots of content from us. And of course, if you want to check out the rest of our podcasts, W2M Network will solve that problem for you. Lots of great stuff on there. And of course, W2Mnet.com, which is our wonderful website that you can go check out for game reviews, wrestling previews, and of course the podcasts and everything else. So, all right. Well, until next week, everybody, where we cover more SmackDown. See you later.
Have a good one.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.